COVID-19 is nothing more than the deliberate collapsing of the global economy, so the real culprits, the US government, the US Federal Reserve, and the big banks on Wall Street have a scapegoat. Don't blame us. It was that virus that did it. Trump calls it the Chinese virus. Trend forecaster, and publisher of the Trends Journal, Gerald Celente, warned that, when all else fails, they take you to war. If we don't fight for freedom, we will die in war, Celente adds. It's said the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It is with the same good intentions that we blindly place our trust in those with power, the architects of our future, and all too often, the manipulators of our ultimate fate. It's just a bad feeling I had last night. I say it sincerely without cryptic irony or conspiracy. I have no information, and also there is no need to create alarmism, but I know that our politicians with their bankers overlords only know one way out of depressions: world war. As this world continues to spiral out of control, and it's not the world of which we grew up in. The bankers, who now have an assured scapegoat for all their past financial violations on the entire world. The government and the Fed, they have run a massive global Ponzi scheme for decades, producing up to $70 trillion of unbacked US dollars and distributed it worldwide, even though they know they can't possibly honor it when it comes back to its shores. The collapse was 100% on the way, so they need a scapegoat to point at. And when everything else fails, they take us to war. Why would they do it? The economy was collapsing under its own weight regardless. At least they can do it themselves with an element of control. Had it collapsed out of their control, who would be the ones being hunted down and hung from lamp posts? They need a distraction and a boogeyman to blame, and they may end up starting a war with China to achieve their goal. We might have been screwed in any case, but now they might point the fingers at the virus for our economic woes. While at the same time, as the past 10 years might have shown, they fill their own private pockets first from the economic stimuli packages. War will also bring American manufacturing home as nothing else could. How have societies overcome depression in the past? War. Every damn time. It's not unlikely it happens again. They've deliberately brought the economy to a smashing halt, which as the days of the Coronageddon continues, the absolute reality is a full-blown depression that will make the 30s pleasant. As the saying goes about history repeating itself. I am banking and betting everything we are definitely heading to WW3. We are in the first stages of a major world war. The magician's hand has released the black crow of death to infect the world, while the hidden hand is preparing to invade America. The world population for many is ecologically too large, and many people in the upper floors of the globalist pyramid think that conflict, after all, is healthy to rebuild the world economy. Amid numerous reports pointing to the responsibility of the Chinese Communist Party in putting millions of lives and the global economy at huge risk due to its lies about the coronavirus outbreak, Cardinal Charles Bo of Myanmar has called on China to apologize to the world and pay compensation for the damage caused. Saying, as a direct result of the untruths, people died, and economies collapsed. Beijing must pay for the damage it maliciously inflicted on the world. China's misdeeds are far worse than people have characterized them. Most critically, China hid the fact it knew that the COVID-19 could be transmitted from one human to another. End of quote. China from its side is accusing the Americans, stating that it was the Americans who spread the virus in China during the Wuhan World Military Games 2019. Meanwhile, in Britain, an investigation by the Henry Jackson Society has concluded that China could have mitigated the worldwide economic impact of COVID-19 and indicated there is evidence the Chinese government breached international healthcare responsibilities. The British foreign policy think tank estimates the spread of coronavirus, which has infected more than 2 million people globally so far, has cost the G7 group of nations including the UK, US, and Japan a huge £3.2 trillion. They are asking Boris Johnson to pursue China for a coronavirus compensation package worth £351 billion. Wouldn't that just be the cherry on top? It is interesting to note that the virus that started in Wuhan had no effect whatsoever on neighboring cities of Beijing and Shanghai but caused many deaths in Italy, Iran, European countries, and the USA. Something is fishy here indeed. All business areas of China are now safe. Today Paris is closed, New York is closed, Berlin is closed, Delhi is closed, Mumbai is closed, Tokyo is closed, the world's major economic and political centers are closed, but Beijing and Shanghai are open. No coronavirus effect is seen in either city. There were only a few cases, but the virus had no real effect on Beijing and Shanghai. Beijing is the city where all the leaders of China live, including their military leaders. There is no lockdown in Beijing. Shanghai is the city that runs China's economy. It is the economic capital of China, where all the rich people of China live and run major industries. There is no lockdown here, there is no effect of the coronavirus there. Beijing and Shanghai are the areas adjoining Wuhan. The virus from Wuhan reached every corner of the world, but the virus did not affect Beijing and Shanghai. Not a single political leader in China, not a single military commander in China, has tested positive. Yes, this all a bit odd and helps the arguments of some spheres in the West who are now openly accusing China of releasing this virus in order to gain economic supremacy. All this is an alarming and dangerous precedent in the relations between the West and China. As the trade tensions have become worse, and the outcome could potentially be worse. The worry is that the brewing 21st century Cold War with China and its junior partner Russia could at some point turn into a hot World War III. Wars start through any number of pathways. One world war happened through deliberate action, the other was a crisis that spun out of control. I think in the current circumstances, the Syrian conflict is taking a back seat at the moment. It could be the Archduke Ferdinand moment, however, to ignite a war between the US and China. The whole narrative is being built up. The next world war will also be seen and felt on American soil. If this were true in prior wars, perhaps the bloodthirsty politicians and bankers would reconsider. But they won't. Meanwhile, China's first aircraft carrier has sailed near disputed waters in the Pacific Ocean as the country's state-run media praised the country's military response to the novel coronavirus while it appeared to mock the United States' struggle with it. Sadly, World War III looks more likely each passing day. Unfortunately, the biggest war could be here in our backyards in the United States, millions and millions with guns fighting amongst ourselves. Welcome back to the Atlantis Report. In his recent World Order, Henry Kissinger examines the effects of the Chinese ancestral character, which, mixing with the communist ideology, has mitigated its defects. Making it possible for peaceful participation in the concert between nations, along the lines of the search for the balance of power resulting from the 17th-century Peace of Westphalia, which had become somewhat global, on which the West is pursuing, being generally led by very elites mediocre. Of course, China, after getting rid of the follies of Maoism, with its permanent revolution that isolated it, has pursued and pursues its path tending to undermine what is now the major world power and take its place, thus redeeming the humiliations suffered by the West in the 19th century, but it does so following the Western method, always within the Westphalian concept, through the military power supported by hyper-technologies. Of course, China also works in the field of the weapon so far called bacteriological, as it was mainly interested in anthrax, and it has a laboratory in which an accident may have happened, but has no interest in spreading viruses or bacteria around the world. China intends to conquer the world through Silk routes, 5G etc. It is my firm opinion that even if China has had an accident, it is the first to be disappointed and tried to remedy the best it can. The US emerged from World War II as the world's leading military and economic power. Since that time, US hegemony has been predicated on 1. Unrivaled military power, 2. Control of the world's energy reserves primarily in the Middle East, and 3. Maintaining the dollar as the world's reserve currency. All of the pillars supporting US power are now threatened by decades of neoliberal economic policies, spending large sums of money on the Pentagon and war and, more recently, attainment of economic, military parity by Russia and China. Syria is centrally located in southwestern Asia on the Mediterranean Sea and bordered by Turkey to the north, Lebanon, and Israel to the west and southwest, Iraq to the east, and Jordan to the south. Syria has been in the crosshairs of U.S. foreign policy for over a decade, as pointed out by General Wesley Clark during his 2007 interview. The goal of U.S. policy in Syria, just as in Iraq, Libya, Yemen, Venezuela, and Iran, has been and continues to be regime change. Turkey is a junior imperialist state, and Turkish President aka Neo-Sultan Recep Erdogan has visions of resurrecting a Neo-Ottoman Empire by annexing Syrian and Iraqi land bordering Turkey. Over the last 2 decades, the U.S. has expended aka squandered astronomical sums of taxpayer money, more than $6 trillion, and the lives of thousands of troops on Middle Eastern wars. After committing such large amounts of financial and human capital, the Pentagon has no intention of admitting their mistakes or changing their behavior. Doing so is an acknowledgement of failure and, by extension, military weakness. Further, the strength and stability of the dollar and, more broadly, U.S. global power is contingent on maintaining control of the Middle East energy reserves. The directors of U.S. foreign policy are well aware of continuing U.S. economic decline and looming strategic debacles confronting the Pentagon in Afghanistan, the longest war in U.S. history, Iraq, Libya, Syria, and Yemen. Consequently, they have no intention of withdrawing troops from Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, or other areas in the Middle East. Bottom line, the U.S. foreign and economic policies over the last 4 decades have bankrupted the U.S. economy and accelerated the U.S. economic decline. An increasingly bellicose U.S. foreign policy or jingoistic posturing by corrupt politicians in no way changes this reality. A complete disaster. This country could have been a paradise on this planet, it truly could have. But greed and hatred and religious zealotry have made us into a country that is an oligarchy. This was the Atlantis Report. Please like, share, subscribe. And please take some time to subscribe to my backup channels, I do upload videos there too. You'll find the links in the description box. You will also find a PayPal link if you want to make a donation. Thank you wholeheartedly to all those of you who have already donated. Stay safe and healthy.